So in this video, we'll consider Hume's argument against induction in light of the fact that perceiving is presuming. And more generally, we'll consider Hume's empiricism, his view that induction can't provide justification, can't provide good reason for belief, can't lead to knowledge, but perceiving can. So the D on the left hand there stands for David Hume. So that's going to be Hume, and the person on the right will just be his interlocutor, the person he's conversing with. So Hume says, how many people are you expecting tonight? And you can imagine that the person on the right runs a theater, and Hume's asking how many people the person on the right expects to show up for a performance that's happening tonight. And the person on the right says 80. And Hume says, why 80? And the response is, well, we sold 40 tickets online. Hume says, so. And the person on the right says, well, attendance always doubles online sales. So since we've sold 40 tickets online, there'll be 80 people attending, approximately. And Hume says, but why think that will happen again tonight? And the response is, because that's how it's always been. And Hume says, but why think the pattern will continue tonight? And the response is the same, because that's how it's always been. And Hume says, but look, if tonight is different from previous nights, then how it's been before doesn't tell you anything about tonight. And the interlocutor says, wait, what? And Hume says, look, the pattern you've observed so far tells you about tonight only if tonight resembles previous show nights. When I asked for evidence that tonight will resemble previous show nights, you pointed to the fact that, previous show nights have resembled the nights before them. But how it's been in the past is evidence of how it will be tonight only if you already know tonight will resemble the past. And the guy says, well, but look, why think tonight will be different? And Hume says, well, why think it will be the same? You're basically saying that the pattern in the past is evidence that tonight will resemble the past because tonight will resemble the past. And the guy says, so? And Hume says, well, look, if you're saying tonight will resemble the past because tonight will resemble the past, that means the pattern counts as evidence only if you already know that tonight will resemble the past. But if you already know that tonight will resemble the past, what's the point of the evidence? And the guy says again, but why think tonight won't resemble the past? And now Hume crucially says, look, I'm not saying it won't. I'm not saying it will or that it won't. I'm just saying we don't know. You're the one who's taking a stand. You're the one who's saying you do know. Okay, so now Hume continues. Think about it like this. I ask you why you say tonight will resemble the past. But instead of giving me a reason, you just presuppose that tonight will resemble the past. Because the reason you give me, that it has always resembled the past before, is just presupposing that tonight will be like those previous times. That's circular reasoning. You claim to tell me why I should agree tonight will resemble the past, but then you just say it will resemble the past because it will. And the guy says, oh. And that's basically Hume's argument against induction. So here's a summary of the argument. Premise 1. Induction aims to show that what you haven't observed yet resembles what you have observed already. Your only reason to think induction works just assumes that what you haven't observed yet resembles what you have observed already. Well, if that's right, then induction is circular reasoning, so induction is circular reasoning. Now, circular reasoning isn't a good way to form beliefs, so induction isn't a good way to form beliefs. All non-demonstrative reasoning, by the way, is induction, and therefore non-demonstrative reasoning isn't a good way to form beliefs. Remember the distinction between demonstrative and non-demonstrative reasoning from the text. Demonstrative reasoning is reasoning that proves its conclusion. It's reasoning such that if the premises are true, then the conclusion is true. It's reasoning such that your argument is valid. Non-demonstrative reasoning is reasoning such that your premises don't guarantee your conclusion. Even if they provide good reason for it, they don't guarantee it. So non-demonstrative reasoning consists of invalid arguments, some of which are good arguments, presumably, some of which aren't. But Hume here is saying they're all bad. If they're not valid, they're bad. Okay. Now, let's think about this argument in light of the fact that perceiving is presuming. Well, if perceiving is presuming, then you perceive what your brain supposes is most probable. And perceiving is presuming, so you perceive what your brain supposes is most probable. Now, to be clear, when I say you perceive what your brain supposes is most probable, I don't mean that you're literally seeing something your brain makes. I mean, or hearing or smelling or whatever. What I mean is how it looks to you, how it sounds to you, and so on and so forth, is how your brain thinks it's most probable to be. Well, what's most probable is true only if what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before. Well, if you perceive what your brain supposes is most probable, and what's most probable is true only if what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before, then perceiving works only if what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before. If that's right, then you have reason to believe perceiving works only if you have reason to believe what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before. Therefore, perceiving works, or you have reason to believe perceiving works, only if you have reason to believe that what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before. Now, let's take this claim down here seriously. I don't know why the Y there got capitalized. That perceiving works only if you have reason to believe what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before, or to put it better, you have reason to believe perceiving works only if you have reason to believe that what you're observing now resembles what you've observed before. And think about this in light of Hume's general position. Hume claims induction isn't a good way to form beliefs because you don't have reason to believe what you've observed resembles what you're observing resembles what you've observed, or what you haven't observed resembles what you have observed. He also says perceiving is a good way to form beliefs. But given 8, perceiving is a good way to form beliefs only if what you're observing resembles what you've already observed. But then you have reason to believe perceiving is a good way to form beliefs only if you have reason to believe that what you haven't observed resembles what you have observed, or what you are observing resembles what you have observed. But then if you accept that perceiving works, you have to reject the argument against induction. Now, this doesn't tell us exactly which premise of Hume's argument against induction is false, but what it does tell us is Hume can't have it both ways. He can't say perceiving is a good way to form beliefs and induction isn't. He has to choose a package. He has to either say perceiving and induction both are good ways to form beliefs, or neither is. Now, that's not quite right, because he could come up with a different argument against induction. So what this really shows is that Hume has to choose between the following. He either has to say perceiving is a good way to form beliefs and so is induction, or he has to say perceiving isn't a good way to form beliefs and neither is induction, or he has to say perceiving is a good way to form beliefs, induction isn't, but I haven't yet given you reason to believe that. So the point is his argument that induction is bad is inconsistent with his claim that perceiving is good, given how perceiving works. Okay, so what should Hume do? Well, condemning both perceiving and induction isn't really a good option. If you don't know that, if perceiving doesn't work, you don't really know anything, and you should be more confident that perceiving can teach you about the world than you are of any argument that says otherwise. After all, if perceiving can't teach you about the world, then you can't know much. But you know a lot. Even Descartes, who tries to doubt everything that can be doubted, remember him, ultimately concludes that perceiving works. At any rate, Hume either needs to reject perceiving or find a different argument against induction. Okay, we'll stop the exploration of Hume on induction there and move on to Bayesian inference next time.